Maya took a deep breath as she stepped into Westbridge High for the first time. Her mother had told her to stand tall, to wear her curls proudly, to let her dark skin gleam with confidence. But it wasn't easy. In her small southern town, she had grown used to being invisible, or worse, judged. Here in this big northern city, she had hoped for a new beginning. But as she walked down the shiny hallway, whispers followed her like shadows. A group of boys leaned against the lockers, led by Brian, a blonde-haired, broad-shouldered boy known for his cruel jokes. He smirked when he saw Maya. "Look what the wind blew in," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Laughter echoed. Maya clutched her books tighter, her stomach twisting. She wanted to run, but she kept moving, step by trembling step. Brian wasn't finished. At lunch, he and his friends cornered Maya in the cafeteria. "What's in your lunchbox? Fried chicken and watermelon?" he jeered, cackling with his buddies. Maya froze. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her food. Around them, students watched, some giggling nervously, others looking away, pretending not to see. But one person did see, a quiet janitor named Mr. Harris, who had been mopping the floor nearby. His eyes narrowed with quiet rage. Maya tried to find her voice, but the words stuck in her throat like stones. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Never let them take your dignity." So she stood there, silent but fierce, her eyes locked on Brian's. The cafeteria fell quiet, a tense silence heavy as thunderclouds. Brian wasn't expecting her to hold his gaze. The power of her stare rattled him. He pushed her tray off the table, splattering food all over the floor. "Clean it up, charity case," he sneered. Something inside Maya snapped. She bent down, not to clean, but to pick up her lunch tray and hold it like a shield. "No," she said, her voice steady now. Brian's smirk faltered. "What did you say?" he barked. Maya straightened. "I said no. You don't get to break me today, not today." Mr. Harris dropped his mop and stepped forward. In a calm, powerful voice he said, "Enough." His words cut through the air like a blade. The students watched in shock as the janitor, the man they all ignored, stood between Maya and Brian. "She doesn't have to clean your mess. You will," Mr. Harris declared, his tone carrying the weight of a lifetime of unspoken battles. Brian's face turned red. He lunged forward, but Mr. Harris caught his arm with surprising strength. "Apologize," he commanded. Brian hesitated, glancing at the circle of students, realizing they weren't laughing anymore. Their eyes were wide, some filled with respect for Maya's courage, others with shame for not standing up sooner. Brian stuttered, the fight draining from his voice. I'm sorry." His words trembled in the quiet room. Maya stood taller, her chin high, her spirit unbroken. In that moment, the cafeteria saw not just a new girl but a warrior, someone who refused to bow, and they saw Brian for what he really was, a coward hiding behind cruel jokes. After that explosive cafeteria moment, word about Maya spread across the school like wildfire. Students whispered about the girl who had stood up to Brian, about the janitor who had stepped in like a quiet guardian. That night, Maya sat at her desk, replaying the day over and over. She wondered if she had done the right thing, but as she looked into her mirror, she saw strength staring back. Strength she didn't even know she had. Her mother knocked gently on the door. "You okay, baby?" she asked, stepping in. Maya nodded. "I think so," she whispered. Her mother pulled her into a hug, whispering, "You made me proud today. The world might try to make you small, but you showed them your spirit." Meanwhile, Brian sat alone in his room, his mind a storm of confusion and rage. For the first time, he wasn't sure if he was the hero of his own story. He kept hearing the silence in the cafeteria, seeing the eyes of his classmates, eyes that judged him, not Maya. The shame crawled up his throat and settled like a heavy stone in his chest. He remembered his father's words, "You show them who's boss, don't let anyone make you look weak." But tonight, for the first time, Brian questioned if his father had been wrong. The next day at school, Brian walked in with hunched shoulders. His usual entourage kept a nervous distance, afraid of being dragged into the fallout. Maya felt the stares again, but this time they weren't mocking. Some students nodded at her. A few even smiled shyly. During lunch, a quiet girl named Emily approached Maya. I just wanted to say what you did yesterday was amazing," she said softly. Maya's eyes softened, and she felt a warmth spread in her chest. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt inside. Mr. Harris, the janitor, watched all this from afar. After his shift, he found Maya sitting on a bench outside. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She shook her head. He sat beside her, silent for a while. Finally, he said, "You reminded me of my daughter yesterday. She fought her own battles too. You did good." Maya looked at him, realizing how much strength and wisdom hid behind those tired eyes. "Thank you for helping me," she said. He shook his head. "You helped yourself. I was just there to remind you that you didn't have to do it alone." His words wrapped around Maya like a warm blanket. Inside, Brian watched from a classroom window. He saw the two of them talking and felt an unexpected sting in his eyes. Regret clawed at him, sharper than any punishment he could imagine. For the first time, he saw how small and mean his actions had been. He remembered every laugh, every shove, every cruel word, and he hated himself for it. That night, Brian didn't sleep. He wrote a letter, not to Maya, but to himself. A confession, a promise to be better, to unlearn the poison that had been fed to him all his life. It was a start, a shaky first step toward redemption. The following week, Maya started noticing little changes. People began to approach her in the hallways, students she didn't even know before. One girl offered to sit with her at lunch. Another boy asked if she needed help carrying her books. The walls she had built around her heart started to soften. But even as kindness trickled in, there were moments when the echoes of Brian's words still haunted her. Mr. Harris, the janitor, continued to check in with her. They'd share short talks after school, sometimes about her dreams, sometimes about his life before this job. "I wanted to be a teacher once," he revealed one afternoon, "but life had other plans." His eyes shone with an ache that Maya recognized immediately, the ache of being seen as less than you are. In those moments, Maya realized that every person carries a hidden story, wounds no one can see. Meanwhile, Brian wrestled with his guilt. The letter he wrote to himself became the first of many. Each night he wrote about his fears, about the father who taught him cruelty instead of compassion, about the emptiness he felt after humiliating others. Writing was the only place he felt safe enough to be honest. One morning he gathered the courage to approach Maya in the hallway. His steps were shaky, and his voice almost broke. "Maya," he started. She turned, her expression guarded but calm. I'm sorry," he stammered, his eyes darting to the floor. There was a heavy silence between them. Maya studied his face, seeing the shame and sincerity battling behind his eyes. Finally, she spoke softly. "I don't forgive you yet. Maybe I will one day. But you need to change, not for me, but for you." Brian nodded, swallowing hard. It wasn't the forgiveness he wanted, but it was the truth he needed. In class, the teacher announced a new group project. To everyone's surprise, Maya and Brian were assigned to the same team. The room buzzed with awkward energy. At first, Brian could barely speak, his hands trembling whenever they had to exchange ideas. But Maya, though cautious, stayed focused on the work. She didn't make it easy for him, nor did she act bitter. She simply treated him like any other classmate, firm, fair, and detached. As they worked together, Brian began to show his efforts to change. He listened more, spoke less, and when he did speak, his words held weight rather than venom. Slowly, the other students began to notice too. Maya kept her guard, but deep inside, a small seed of respect for Brian's effort began to take root. On the day of their presentation, the class watched them with curiosity. Maya spoke first, her voice confident and smooth. Then, Brian stepped forward. His voice wavered at first, but when he looked at Maya and saw her steady gaze, he found strength. They finished their presentation to an unexpected round of applause. It wasn't just for their project, it was for the quiet, unspoken journey they had taken together. After class, Mr. Harris found them in the hallway. "I saw your presentation," he said, smiling. "Proud of both of you." Maya smiled back, and for the first time, Brian allowed himself to smile too, a real, humble smile. In that moment, something shifted in the air, a sign that maybe change was possible after all. Days turned into weeks, and the once icy walls between Maya and the rest of the school began to crumble. More students started greeting her warmly, and some even apologized for standing by in silence when Brian first bullied her. Maya's strength had inspired them to reflect on their own actions, to question the roles they played as silent witnesses. Brian's transformation wasn't easy. Every day he wrestled with shame and regret. But each day he made small choices, helping a classmate with homework, standing up for a younger student who was being mocked, or simply listening when someone spoke. He no longer craved laughter at someone else's expense. Instead, he began to seek genuine connection. One afternoon, Maya stayed behind after class to talk with Mr. Harris. The sun streamed through the dusty windows, illuminating the old janitor's wise face. "Mr. Harris," she said hesitantly, "do you ever wish you had chosen a different path? Maybe you wouldn't be cleaning up after kids who don't see you." He chuckled softly, leaning on his broom. "Child, sometimes the path chooses you. And sometimes the smallest acts, like picking up a paper or comforting a scared kid, are the greatest acts of service. We don't always get to see the seeds we plant bloom, but that doesn't mean they don't grow." His words washed over Maya like a warm wave, soothing and empowering her. That evening, she wrote in her journal, "Strength isn't just about fighting back. It's about forgiving yourself, too. About letting go of the poison others pour into you." She closed the book and felt a lightness she hadn't felt since moving to this new town. Brian, too, found himself journaling late into the night. One entry read, "I thought power was about fear, but real power is in kindness, in making others feel safe instead of small." A school-wide talent show was announced, and to everyone's surprise, Maya signed up to perform a spoken-word poem. The day of the show arrived, and as she stepped onto the stage, her heart pounded. She could see Brian in the front row, Mr. Harris standing at the back, and dozens of other students waiting in hushed silence. Her voice started softly, trembling slightly, but as her words flowed, they filled the auditorium with warmth and raw power. "I was never meant to be small. Your words tried to fold me in half, tried to fit me into a mold you called normal. But I am galaxies beyond your labels. I am the echo of every woman who stood alone, the heartbeat of every child, who was told to hush. I am the dawn you cannot dim, the sun that rises again and again. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence before the entire room erupted in applause. Maya's eyes glistened as she stepped off stage, her hands shaking from the adrenaline and release. Backstage, Brian approached her, tears in his eyes. You were amazing, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Maya looked at him for a long moment and nodded. In that nod, there was a silent forgiveness, a promise of new beginnings. Mr. Harris later found her in the hallway, beaming. You showed them your true light, he said, his voice trembling with pride. And you gave this place more hope than any lesson or lecture ever could. That night, as Maya lay in bed, she felt a peace settle over her heart. She knew the road ahead would still have shadows, but she had found her voice, and with it, a power no one could take away. After the talent show, the entire school felt different. It was as though Maya's words had opened a crack in the walls that had kept so many hearts hidden. Students who had once giggled at insults now paused to think before they spoke. Teachers noticed students stepping up to defend each other. Even the principal praised Maya's courage in the morning assembly, encouraging everyone to learn from her example. Brian, meanwhile, began to truly transform. He started volunteering at the library and offered to tutor younger students. Slowly, he earned back some trust. But more importantly, he started to forgive himself. Each act of kindness was a quiet apology, a step toward becoming someone he could be proud of. Maya didn't forget Mr. Harris's words about planting seeds. She started a small after-school group called Voices Unheard, where anyone could come and share their stories, write poetry, or just talk without fear of judgment. The group grew faster than she expected. Students who had been invisible began to shine. The shy artist who had never shown her sketches, the boy who stuttered and had stopped speaking in class, the girl who wore headphones all day to avoid the world. One by one, they began to share and heal. One rainy afternoon, Maya sat in the library waiting for Brian. He had agreed to come speak at her group. When he arrived, soaked from the rain but determined, he looked around nervously before beginning. I used to think strength meant making others feel small, he said, his voice echoing in the quiet room. I thought power came from fear. But Maya taught me that real power is lifting people up, not pushing them down. I'm sorry for everything. There was a pause, then a slow clap. One student stood, then another, until the entire room was applauding him. Brian's eyes welled up as he realized he wasn't alone anymore. After the session, Maya and Brian walked home together under one umbrella. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, and the world smelled of wet earth and fresh beginnings. Brian looked at Maya and said softly, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Maya smiled. We all need someone to see us for who we really are, even when we don't deserve it. As they reached Maya's porch, she turned and saw Mr. Harris across the street, quietly sweeping the sidewalk despite the rain. She waved at him, and he gave her a warm, proud nod, a silent salute to the new generation he had watched grow. That night, Maya sat in her room, writing in her journal. She wrote about forgiveness, about the power of words, about the way a single act of bravery could ripple out and change an entire community. She realized she had not only changed herself, but had given others permission to change too. As she closed her journal, she looked out the window at the moonlit street. She felt an unshakable warmth inside, the kind that only comes when you know you've stood up for your truth and helped others find theirs too. Maya knew her story wasn't over. There would always be new challenges, new shadows, But she was ready, because she had learned the most important lesson of all. When you choose kindness and courage, you don't just survive, you transform. And you help others transform with you.